Welcome to episode 5 of Manchester to Madrid World Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Rogers, and I'll be joined today by my good friend and co-host of the show, Sam Johnson. Today we have a really exciting episode planned for everyone. We're going to be touching on our way too early preview and predictions for Euro 2020. But first, if you're checking us out for the first time and like what you hear, we would greatly appreciate if you subscribed, followed us on Podbean, and shared with 3 of your friends that love football as much as we do. We're available everywhere you listen to your podcasts, including Apple, Google, YouTube, Spotify, and tons more. Find us on Twitter at RRMTMFootball and at SJ10MTM, or send us an email at mtmfootballpod@gmail.com. We will do our very best to respond to anything sent our way, and now let's get to our Euro 2020 show. What's up, Sam?
Yeah, not much, Ryan. I'm doing well. Had a pretty good week this week. I'm having a great time watching the Bundesliga, as I hope everyone out there is as well. I'm enjoying watching RB Leipzig as I usually do, as they're playing extremely well right now, and especially today with Timo Werner scoring a hat trick, and then as well as Kai Havertz playing for Leverkusen, with them just dominating, and it seems like they're really making a run to the top. So, and we'll talk more about that as we continue with this show. But yeah, I went to the beach this week and hung out as we see things start to open back up here in the U.S. and the quarantine regulations start to shift away. But yeah, that's up with me. What's going on with you, Ryan?
Yeah, it's been a pretty good week. Moved up to Virginia last weekend, so settling in still, but getting everything sorted. The weather's been really nice, and it's been really fun up at the Chesapeake Bay. So yeah, I've been watching soccer this past weekend. We had the Gladbach-Leverkusen game, which I was super, super excited for. Probably the first Bundesliga game I've really paid close attention to since it restarted, and it was a joy to watch. Leverkusen were absolutely incredible. Like Sam said, Kai Havertz is just a beast right now. He is absolutely killing it. I also got an article done for Blanco Talks. If y'all didn't know, I write for a Real Madrid page on Twitter called Blanco Talks. They're great. You should check them out. They've got a bunch of great articles, news, transfer rumors, everything you can think of. So I wrote for them talking about a Real Madrid squad preview for next season. And yeah, just been a really good week. Glad soccer's back. Looks like we'll have some other leagues back soon, but I'm going to send it over to Sam, and he's going to give us our bold prediction for the week.
Yeah, so my bold prediction, I kind of prefaced this in my when you asked me what's kind of going on. I said I was enjoying Kai Havertz play so much. And that kind of leads to my bold prediction of that Kai Havertz will move to Liverpool this summer. Now, obviously, this would be heartbreaking to me, as much as I love him and as much as I dislike Liverpool. Liverpool right now are kind of debating on who they want to go for. Obviously, they won't be able to afford both Kai Havertz and Timo Werner. So my prediction is that I'll end up going for Kai Havertz. I think that Kai Havertz is such a natural like-for-like with Roberto Firmino with a much higher ceiling, in my opinion. I think Kai Havertz will want to leave the club this summer. I think he'll go to the club and he'll say, "I've given you tons of service here, and I think it's time for me to step up to a bigger club." And I think Liverpool is the spot for him. I think Liverpool, they'll have enough money this summer, of course, with their recent success and kind of their global brand. I think they'll have just enough money to maybe afford one player. And I think with a player like Kai Havertz being out there, they just can't pass up on it.
Yeah, I think he would actually really excel at Liverpool. Obviously, he's had a phenomenal season. Started off a bit shaky towards the beginning of the year, but has really settled in. I think Marco Bos has done an incredible job with him, and he is definitely headed up. I actually always kind of envisioned him as that very Mesut Ozil kind of player, a little bit taller, a bit more lankier, but sort of that number 10 role that sits deep, playmaker, can score here and there, but not too much. But recently, just it seems like he's been playing in the striker position up top in the 9, and they've been feeding him in balls. He can head it. He scored a double last week, scoring just headers. He can still make all the passes. He's really turning into an insanely good player. I was listening to BR Football Ranks this past week, and they talked about just how good Kai Havertz has been recently. And Jack Collins was saying that he could possibly win a Ballon d'Or one day. I don't know if I would say that, because I think there's a player in PSG called Kylian Mbappe, and he is an absolute world beater. But Kai Havertz truly has all the talent in the world. He can definitely be extremely successful wherever he moves after Leverkusen. So my bold prediction for the week, this one is a bit far off. We don't really know exactly when the Champions League is going to be back. It looks like it's going to be in August, but we'll see how things go. Basically, in the first leg, Manchester City beat Real Madrid 2-1. Real had a pretty good first half. Manchester City absolutely ripped them to shreds in the second half, scoring 2 goals. And then everyone kind of wrote off Real. People gave them no chance. But by August, 2 of Madrid's most important players that they've kind of been missing most of the year, Hazard and Asensio, will be featuring on the wings. Hopefully they'll be healthy by then. Madrid will have found some form. Maybe Benzema will get the goals going back. And I think at the end of the day, you kind of have to look at Champions League experience and just the teams that have the ability to sort of just step up when it matters most. And what other club is there than Real Madrid when it comes to doing that in the Champions League? So my bold prediction is that Real will beat Manchester City in the second leg of the Champions League, and they will go on in the tournament. I don't think they're talented enough to win it this year. I think we're missing 1 to 2 key players, but I think we do have a shot at beating Manchester City, and we shouldn't be written off.
Yeah, no, I think that as long as Real Madrid's around, they'll have a chance to win, whatever fixture it may be in the Champions League. But I think with Manchester City's kind of their predicament right now with the potential ban from the Champions League for the next 2 years, I think that we'll see the Manchester side kind of go for a more Champions League approach rather than the Premier League. So I think what we'll see is they'll rest their strong players, their best players for those Champions League games, as opposed to playing them 3 times a week in the Premier League, which could see them kind of slip there. But I can't see any reason that Manchester City would not come out and be top form when the time comes for that second leg. Of course, we've seen some catastrophic drop-off from them before. We've seen some disasters in the Champions League, but we've also seen them play extremely well at some points this season, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be at that level when the 2 teams come together in August.
Next up, we are going to head on over to our Manchester United and Real Madrid news. I'm going to hand it over to Sam, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Manchester United this past week.
Yeah, we just have a couple of things going on this week with United in terms of kind of when we'll be back to the Premier League season. There's still no return date officially so far, but I think a lot of people are pretty much eyeing down like maybe the last kind of week of June or so. Most of the clubs are back training. Most of them have been through coronavirus testing a couple of rounds now. We've seen, I think, 1 player for Bournemouth get tested positive, but I think that's it as far as I know so far. I think this is super significant for United because that's another month for Paul Pogba, Marcus Rashford, and Bruno Fernandes, which I think a lot of people will agree is kind of that triad, the best 3, what the team will run through for the next, however long that those 3 stay at the club. And I think all 3 of those will be full fitness and be ready to go for the restart. And I think without the fans being there, I think it's going to be a lot more of just individual skill and talent and the teams, just the better teams winning those games. And I think that's really going to show through with Pogba and Rashford especially being fit again. I think it'll be really hard to beat United when it comes back. And I think, we really have a good shot at third when we come back. And then, kind of the only other thing we have this week is there's been a lot of rumors that United are shopping for a young central defender. Now, as I do understand that, there's a lot of young, very talented players out there, but I think what we have already in the youth system is good enough. We have plenty of guys in our U21 level that I think could be that kind of backup central defender, young central defender that we're kind of looking for. The first name that comes to mind for United fans, I think, has to be Axel Tuanzebe, who we've seen go out on loan to Aston Villa to great effect, who we've seen play a couple of times this season. He's had some bad injury problems, but as long as he's healthy, and I think as long as he continues to grow season by season, I don't see any reason for us to go for another defender. But yeah, that's kind of all we have going on this week. What about Real Madrid, Ryan?
So for Real news, 2 small things. Or I guess this first one isn't too small. The other day, La Liga officially gave the all clear to start back June 8th, which is really exciting. I think the first game is Betis Sevilla, but I could be wrong. That'd be a really exciting game. But yeah, just really excited. La Liga is going to be starting soon. The players have been in training. Zidane's been working them, getting them back into shape. All the players are back in training with the exception of Luka Jovic and Mariano. And then second up in Madrid news this week, obviously Achraf Hakimi played this past weekend for Dortmund. Fantastic. He is just raising his level continuously. He seems like one of the few players that really haven't been slowed down by this quarantine time period where we haven't had play. It looks like he's in shape. He's still blistering down the sidelines, beating everyone. He's still scoring from the right wing back position. Him and Rafael Guerreiro have just been a fantastic duo, and I'm so excited for Achraf Hakimi to return next season. His agent this past week said that he kind of shut down some other transfer rumors and said Achraf would be returning to Madrid at the end of the season. And then you combine that with the return of Martin Odegaard, which is looking more and more likely. Real could have some really exciting young players on their hands next year.
Yeah, I think with the Hakimi situation, what we're seeing right now is a very young player, a very talented player, very quick, very skilled. Are we going to see him want to go back to Real Madrid and fight for a starting spot with Dani Carvajal, or are we going to see him want to stay at Dortmund, maybe for another year on loan or whatever it may be, maybe a transfer fee, whatever it comes down to? I think he plays the perfect role in Dortmund's system right now. Dortmund's system with Guerreiro and Hakimi let them just bomb up the wings. Very little defensive responsibility with the way Dortmund play and the way that they just attack their opponents just relentlessly. And I think if you're looking from Hakimi's point of view, obviously you want to play for Real Madrid. But I think from his personal point of view, does he want to go back and fight for a starting spot? Is Madrid going to say, okay, you're the guy. Dani Carvajal is not our guy anymore. What does that look like? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, we need to remember Achraf Hakimi was actually introduced into the first team at Real by Zinedine Zidane. When we were competing for, I believe, the 11th Champions League title. We had La Liga going on. Hakimi was brought into the squad when we had a bunch of injuries. I think like Dani Carvajal and Nacho were injured. Brought in Hakimi, and he filled in great. Obviously, he was really young. He was really raw, so he went out on loan. But I think Zidane has proven time and time again that he really likes Achraf Hakimi. And don't forget, Hakimi's played in a more forward position this season. And our right-wing options next year, really nobody has any idea what's going to happen. Mbappe is not coming in, plain and simple, this summer. We really have no idea what's going to happen with Gareth Bale. That's a total toss-up if he stays or leaves. Asensio is going to be coming off an ACL injury. Lucas Vasquez isn't that good. So maybe in certain games when there's a lot of games, there's tons of congestion in the schedule, we could actually see Achraf Hakimi move up to right wing. That would definitely be an interesting option. I mean, he can score. He's getting close to double digits in the Bundesliga this year. So I don't see why in certain situations we could have Hakimi move up. So now we're going to do a This Day in History, and this one is probably one of my all-time favorites. 6 years ago today, back in 2014, Real won the infamous La Decima, their 10th Champions League title, probably the most historic Champions League win of all time. No other club is even close. No club has close to 10, and Real won this 10th with Carlo Ancelotti at the helm. We had an extremely good team. And yet, Atletico Madrid pushed us to the very limits. Iker Casillas had a bit of a blunder early in the first half, which saw Atletico go ahead. And then we waited, and we thought we were going to lose 1-0 to this really incredible, historic Atleti team. But then 92-48 rolled around. Luka Modric whipped in a corner kick, and out of nowhere, Sergio Ramos struck gold. He found the back of the net. And the rest is history. We went into overtime. Atleti were exhausted at this point just because of Diego Simeone's really intense style. We scored 3 goals, 1-4-1, and yeah, that's La Decima, one of the most famous Champions Leagues of all time, and one of my all-time favorites to watch.
Yeah, I think you hit it all there. I think, what we saw in that game, I remember watching it too. I remember it like it was yesterday. We saw an Atleti team that definitely did not deserve to be winning that game, but it seemed like somehow they were going to do it, as they were doing all season long, playing that Simeone style, like you said. And, as we saw Ramos score that goal, one of the most important goals, one of the goals that you remember when you think of the Champions League and you think of the final, along with, a couple of others that you could definitely think of off the top of your head. But I think we saw that Ramos goal go in and the floodgates open, like you said, and I think we saw the real quality of that Real team in that extra time period.
Yeah, and that was truly the beginning of that sort of dominant period. For some reason, I'm not really sure, we let Carlo Ancelotti go at the end of the year, but that led to Zinedine Zidane, and we all know what happened with him. So that was truly the beginning of sort of this Real Madrid 5-year period of absolute dominance. I'm so happy it happened. And yeah, that's everything for our This Day in History segment. So next up, we are going to go to our biggest winners and losers of the week. I'm going to hand it over to Sam, and he's going to give us our 2.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna hit this really quick. I actually have two winners this week. I have Timo Werner, as I've talked about plenty of times, even earlier in this episode, scoring that hat trick. First time he scored in 8 games. I mentioned in our last episode that if Leipzig are going to win the league, they need Timo Werner to really go off, and they're well on their way to doing that with this game and Timo Werner's performance. And then kind of my second winner I wanted to throw in is Alphonso Davies. He played incredible for Bayern Saturday, as you listen to this. What we're seeing in Alphonso Davies is a shift in that left back position to just a player that can just bomb down the field, and he's really made that position his own, even scoring a goal, which is so big for him. And as myself being kind of an MLS fan, seeing a player that's homegrown, that came from the system, to moved across to Germany and playing so well, I'm super proud of that. And then as I jump in my loser here, I think as we talked about earlier, Ryan added in about the Bundesliga doing a fantastic job with quarantining and with the rules there, regulations and everything. And Ryan also mentioned that the La Liga is going to start really soon, but in the last kind of 12, 24 hours, we've seen a group of Sevilla players kind of breaking those rules, kind of hanging out with their friends in public and stuff, which obviously it's minor, but I think we have to be strict. I think the Bundesliga has shown that you have to be super strict with these regulations, and if we want to see football again in Spain, it has to be completely safe, and it has to be, every player has to be free of the virus, guaranteed. Every player has to be super disciplined, and I think we saw kind of a step back there with this. I think, you can't run at Sevilla as a club. You just have to look at those players, but just generally, we have to see everyone being disciplined and everyone following these rules as close as possible if we want to see football in Spain again.
Yeah, if Sevilla players are the reason we don't have La Liga back, which I don't think will be the case, but just theoretically, I would be extremely mad. Sevilla would probably, bump up into my top 3 most hated teams. So I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to have soccer back very soon, especially in Spain. But yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think players do need to be really careful. Bundesliga has done a really, really good job of containing players, keeping everyone safe. And it's just been an excellent return, and I hope so much that La Liga can follow. So my biggest winners and losers of the week, first my winner, and that is Kai Havertz. We've already touched on him, but he has turned into a phenomenal player. I know it's just 2 games, and he's been really good for several years now, but this number 9 role he's been playing, he's really made it his own. Scoring back-to-back 2-goal games, his team Leverkusen on fire, and he's sort of leading the charge. And Leverkusen, I don't think they can win the title, but I don't see why they can't push Dortmund for second. It seems if they keep this going, they could definitely get third. And yeah, they've just been a super good team, and a lot of that has to do with Kai Havertz. Hopefully he will continue this hot run of form for the rest of the year, and we will see a phenomenal player by the time this season is done. And for my loser this week, it is also Bundesliga related, and that is Schalke. David Wagner's men have really, really been struggling. They came back from the break with back-to-back losses. The first game they lost 4-0, and then they just followed it up with a 3-0 loss to Augsburg. And Augsburg are not that great. I think they're mid to lower side of the table. So, yeah, Wagner's men have really been struggling. I think before the break they had lost, or they hadn't won like 5 or 6 games in a row. So it seems like they're sort of falling apart, which is really disappointing. Schalke haven't been good in a while, and I thought we were going to see a return to them being at least competitive in the top 6, but they're dropping like a rock. So we'll see how they finish the season. But yeah, tough couple losses for Schalke.
Yeah, I think when we look at Schalke, we have to automatically compare them to Hamburg and what happened to them. And Hamburg were the longest-serving Bundesliga team before they got relegated last season, and I think Schalke's kind of far away from that right now. I don't think we will see that this year, even if they kind of keep this losing streak going. But I think them as a club, they have to be super careful now that they kind of pick this up. It's been 2, like Ryan said, 2 dreadful performances, awful performances from them, given one was against Dortmund. But it just seems like they lack the drive, and they've been through a couple of coaches now, and they have to figure this out. And, it would be a shame to see kind of Schalke join Hamburg and those like fallen giants, but I think we could be well on our way to seeing that. And maybe it's a little extreme, but it's definitely realistic, and all you have to do is look at Hamburg to see why.
Yeah, it really just takes one bad season. We look at Hamburg You look at Sunderland in the Premier League. It just out of nowhere, boom, you're in the second division. Now, like Sam said, I don't think Schalke are that bad. But, let's say they really tank the rest of the year. David Wagner gets fired. They have to hire an unexperienced head coach. There's no backing financially because coronavirus has taken away a lot of funds, people being able to invest in the transfer window and such. And then boom, you're in the second Bundesliga division. So definitely keep an eye on Schalke. Hopefully they can sort of rebound and at least get back mid-table. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens with Schalke the rest of the year. And as usual, we're going to move on to our transfer rumor segment and then follow that up with our main segment for the show, which is going to be our Euro 2020 predictions. Sam and I are both super excited to do these. They're a bit early, but that's kind of what makes them super fun. So first, let's get into transfer rumors, and then we'll move on over to the Euros. So first transfer rumor of the week, and that is Philippe Coutinho. Now, one of the Bayern executives recently said in the past 2 or 3 days that basically timetable for Bayern to decide on accepting the option to buy Philippe Coutinho from Barcelona had now passed. I think it was around 150 million, which is already really steep for a player that hasn't been good really since he moved to Barcelona. You combine that with the coronavirus situation, teams not having as much money as they usually do, and this was just a no-brainer. He's been okay at Bayern, but nothing special, but now it's kind of up in the air where he's going to go. I think several Premier League clubs are interested in him. But I don't think there's going to be any truly elite teams interested in Philippe Coutinho until he sort of takes a step back, regains some form, maybe moves to one of those like second-tier clubs that are still really good. And he's really got to regain sort of the form, the way he was headed on. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Philippe Coutinho, where he's going to be next year and for years to come is definitely up in the air now with Bayern declining that option. Then next up, we have Mauro Icardi, the Argentinian striker on loan at PSG from Inter Milan. This is very similar to Coutinho, where PSG have the option to pay for Mauro Icardi at the end of his loan deal. I think Inter are looking for around $75 million. I think that's the right currency. It may be a different one, but yeah, around $75 million regardless. It seems that DiMarzio, which is a pretty good source, has said that PSG have offered around $65 million. And Inter have declined that. So unless PSG are willing to stump up that extra $10 million or find an agreement somewhere in between, we could see PSG lose out on Icardi. They could lose out on Cavani. He might be a free agent at the end of the year, and they're left without a striker. Icardi's future club is up in the air, and yeah, that'll definitely be an interesting case of limbo, especially if they aren't able to agree on a fee.
Yeah, it's like, as you mentioned, I think we've seen Mauro Icardi playing very well this season. It's kind of the opposite of Philippe Coutinho, who struggled at times over the last couple of years. Icardi's kind of had a revelation at PSG. He's been playing super well, especially in the first half of the season. We saw him banging in goals left and right, and I think he's finally found a place where he can, be himself again, whereas when he was at Inter, it was kind of toxic left and right, nothing was really going well.
There was so much off-the-field drama.
Exactly, with his agent and everything, and it's sad to see him kind of going back and kind of leaving that place where he was doing really well. I think Inter will find it really difficult to get their $75 million asking price from anyone. So I think, worst comes to worst, I think we could definitely see him staying in Milan for another year, and that would just be, I think, a lose-lose situation for everyone. But if Inter aren't going to budge in that fee, then he's definitely not leaving.
Yeah, I think if Cavani were to leave this summer, PSG should definitely stump up the money. They'd have more than likely Kylian and Neymar still for another year, and you combine that with Icardi, who's a very, very good poacher. He's a really good striker when there's no drama going on off the field. So that front three, you combine that with Di Maria behind them, some other really good attacking midfielders like Pablo Sarabia, Idrissa Gueye, they could be really good. So I think they should stump up the money for Mauro Icardi, but we will have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and so our final transfer rumor for this episode is going to be about Gonzalo Higuain. Now we've seen kind of an up and down kind of couple of years for him. Of course, with him being back in Italy now after playing in the Premier League for a little bit as well. So I think the rumors we're seeing right now are him going back to the Premier League. Wolves and Newcastle kind of be the two names that have popped up the most. I can't really see this happening. I think Wolves will definitely be looking for a striker. I think if Raul Jimenez goes, which I think is very possible this summer, I think that Wolves will be looking for a replacement. I'm not sure Higuain's the right guy for them. I think he's just one of those players that just didn't work in the Premier League, so let's not try it again. And then with Newcastle, of course, we've seen them linked to every player and manager under the sun. Of course, all the money that they have now, supposedly, of course, they're going to struggle to spend that with financial fair play rules at the start. But yeah, no, I don't think there's any concrete really evidence here that could see him going to either club. I'll give it maybe a 3 or a 4. I could see him leaving for sure, but Wolves and Newcastle just don't seem right for me.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. And just to add a little note, I didn't really do assigned numbers for Icardi and Coutinho because their situations are very much up in the air. They haven't really been linked with a specific club, and I more so just wanted to provide some sort of status update for what's going on. So now we're going to jump into our way too early Euro 2020 predictions. Obviously, we wouldn't be making these predictions, or we would be doing them right on time if things weren't a bit hectic in the world right now. But as everyone knows, Euro 2020 has been pushed back to next summer due to the coronavirus. So yeah, we're going to jump into our Euro 2020 predictions. I'm going to start it off with Sam. He's going to quickly run us through the groups, talk about any teams he thinks will be interesting, sort of the standings for each group, and I'll kind of chime in here and there and add stuff.
Yeah, so I think we see some really interesting groups this time around. I think, it's very well spread out with exception to Group F, but we'll get there. Group F definitely being kind of called the group of death for this tournament. But yeah, no, we're going to start off with Group A, which is going to feature a very, very young Italy team, very up-and-coming Italy team. Wales, Switzerland, and Turkey. And I think as we see that, I think some of the most interesting things we have to look at is how Roberto Mancini's done the last couple of years there and how he's turned this team from an aging group to kind of this super young, as I mentioned, super young, super talented team that's going to drive forward and keep getting better. We could definitely see them winning this group. But I think, it'll be tough for them later in the tournament with, like I said, those young players and their heads kind of not being as used to that high pressure situation as these other teams. But I could definitely see them winning the group, and I could see like Wales coming in second. I could see Switzerland coming in second as well. But I think what Wales have is that flair going forward. I think, obviously Gareth Bale is going to be there. I know, we have our feelings about Gareth Bale on this podcast, but Gareth Bale will be playing for Wales. They have a couple of weapons that could really make a difference for them in that Group A. And I think with Switzerland as well, we've seen them do pretty well in major tournaments in the past as well. Of course, with the World Cup last time around, they proved themselves to be a really tough team to beat. So I think Group A is pretty interesting. I think Group B is, if we were to pick one group that's kind of like, maybe the group no one's really going to pay attention to that much, I think it would be Group B. Obviously, it has Belgium, and it has Russia, it has Finland, and Denmark as well. Now, what's interesting about Finland, as Ryan and I talked about before the podcast, is Finland did incredibly well in their qualifying group. I'm not sure the exact record, but I do remember them playing very good football. And they have some very good weapons on their team, including Timo Pukki, who, if we could see kind of emulate that form he showed us at the start of the Premier League season, I think Finland could go far. But for me, I think with Russia and the weapons they have and kind of what they showed us at the World Cup for 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, of course, when the Euros come around, but I think Russia will take that second place behind Belgium, who I know Ryan and I are both really high on for this tournament. I think Belgium can make a run, but yeah, that's how I kind of feel about Group B. We jump into Group C here. We have the Netherlands, we have Ukraine, Austria, and we have our first playoff scenario. Now, if we look at our playoff scenario here for Group C, we have Georgia and Belarus facing off against the winner of Macedonia and Kosovo. And so I think if we look at that, I think none of those four teams are really going to be able to challenge, I think, the Netherlands and especially Austria in this group. I think that the Netherlands, and you'll hear me talk about the Netherlands as we go on in this conversation, I think the Netherlands are one of the strongest teams at the Euros. Defensively, they are fantastic. Their midfield's very good, and they have some very young options up top as well. And I think Austria, we see them play pretty well no matter when they step on the field. And so I think those two kind of take the cake there. If we go into Group D, we have England, Croatia, the playoff winner of the third playoff between Norway, Serbia, Scotland, and Israel. And then we have Czech Republic as well. Now, I think if we look at the World Cup 2 years ago, we saw England and Croatia do very well in that tournament. I think this is no different. Regardless of who wins that playoff, regardless of what we see from the Czech Republic, I think that England and Croatia are just a little too strong there. I think that they'll go forward and win that. England, tons of young players, very flair players. Their attacking options are just astounding. Maybe a little bit of problems in the midfield. With no kind of that one player to play beside Jordan Henderson. No one really jumps off the page, in my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see there. But I think Group D, England and Croatia definitely hold the candle there. We jump into Group E. We see a Spain side, which, we've seen struggle lately. We've seen, a team kind of, that old guard kind of go away. Maybe a little bit less talent now. Sergio Ramos, he's going to need a new center back partner. I know Ryan will talk a little bit about that as well. But what we see with Spain is maybe a lack of identity right now. And if they can find that, then I could see them going far in this tournament. But specifically in Group E, I could see them winning Group E with Sweden, Poland, and the winner of the second playoff between Bosnia and Herzegovina, Northern Ireland, Slovakia, and the Republic of Ireland as well. For me, Spain and Poland. Poland, of course, with Robert Lewandowski, who you guys know I've said I think is going to win the Ballon d'Or this year. I think he alone is good enough to take Poland to a second place result in Group E. And then as we go on to Group F, as I mentioned earlier, the group of death in this tournament, we see Portugal, France, and Germany right off the bat. And I think a lot of people would say 3 of the top 5 teams in this tournament easily. And I know Ryan's kind of low on Germany. He'll explain that to you a little later as well. But with Portugal, we see, of course, the last European Championship winners. We see the World Cup winners in France. We see a playoff winner, which I think a lot of people would expect to be Iceland in this situation, with them going up against Romania, and then the winner of Bulgaria and Hungary as well. Of course, what we've seen from Iceland in the previous couple of competitions is a very hard team to beat. A very astounding team that plays very well together. Maybe no individual brilliant players, but that just adds to the scene of this group. I think every single game in this group we'll watch with very close attention, and it's just a shame this is a year away, because I really, really cannot wait to see this group play out. In my opinion, I think France will win. I think that a lot of people would struggle to disagree here. I think France could win every game at this tournament. They could win every game easily, but we'll talk about more about that in a moment. But yeah, no, I think the runner-up here, definitely between Germany and Portugal. In my opinion, it'll be Germany. I know Ryan disagrees with that. But Germany, for me, all the young talent they have, everything that we've seen from them in the last couple of tournaments, and maybe the World Cup, I think we didn't see that Germany team. We didn't see that classic team. But I think it depends quite a bit on the form of the players we see. But of course, we have Kai Havertz, we have Timo Werner, Leroy Sané. We have so many young flair players that I think are going to be very, very fun to watch. And of course, you can't forget about Manuel Neuer. You can't forget about Nicolas Süle, and all the players that they have in that spine of the team. I think, we'll have to wait and see who plays center back beside Süle at the tournament. And there's a couple of options, but nothing really standing out right now. But I think Germany will do very well at the tournament, and I think Portugal will take one of the 4 third place spots. And if I go back and pick the other 4, I think the other 3, that'll finish third. I think Sweden, I think Sweden could go through Group E in third place. I think that the Czech Republic could go through in Group D in third place, and Switzerland we could also see go through in third. But that's kind of my initial thoughts about it. And Ryan, tell us what you think about everything.
Yeah, so I agree with what a lot of Sam said. I've got a couple things that I kind of did differently, so I'll quickly go through my groups as well. So start off Group A, I have Italy finishing first, Switzerland in second, and then Turkey finishing out in third. And just for control's sake, since we haven't seen the playoffs happen yet, I'm essentially excluding all of the playoff teams. Iceland is probably the best playoff team in the competition, and they will be in the group of death. So just to make it a little easier, I'm going to exclude all the playoff teams from finishing anywhere higher than last in their group, just to make things a little easier since we don't know the teams. Group B, I have Belgium winning. They're by far the best team in that group. They're one of the best teams in the world. Here we'll kind of see the amount of players they have that are just sheer brilliant. Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Romelu Lukaku, they've always seemed to be really good. Now, granted, Belgium's defense might be a little shakier than we're used to. Vertonghen, Alderweireld aging. They might not be on the same team by the time this tournament rolls around, so they might have a little less chemistry. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on Belgium. They're good enough to win the tournament. They came close in the previous World Cup, so definitely keep an eye on Belgium. Second in that group, I have Denmark. Yusuf Poulsen, Christian Eriksen, two really good players. And usually in groups with weaker teams, you have those few stars that sort of pull through and elevate your team to the next level and grab you a couple points that people weren't expecting. So yeah, I think Denmark is going to grab second. And then third, Finland. I'm pretty high on Finland. Not a super good team. Teemu Pukki is really their only superstar, I guess you could say, but they were fantastic in qualifying, and I don't think we can rule them out as one of those dark horse teams that could secretly sneak far into the competition. They just catch form and find a way to get it done. So moving on to Group C, like Sam said, he's really high on the Netherlands. I'm not as high on them, but I still think they will win the group, followed by Austria. Austria's not great, but they do have David Alaba, who usually plays well. Group D, I have England finishing first. I'm pretty high on England. I think they could be absolutely terrific. The other week, Sam and I were talking about their attacking options. We look at Harry Kane, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling, and then they've got that trio or even four players that can play in that center attacking mid-role. Ross Barkley plays really well for England for whatever reason, even though he's terrible at the club level. They'll have Mason Mount, Jack Grealish, James Maddison. So yeah, England could be the highest scorers in the tournament. They could be banging in goals left and right. Next up in second place, we have Croatia. They're not going to be as good as we saw them in the World Cup, since many of their players have either moved on to lower levels of soccer, like Mandzukic. I think he moved to like Tar or China. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, he's definitely moved on to a lower level of soccer. Perisic is injury prone and getting older. Luka Modric will be, 36, I think, at the time. So they still have the talent to get second, but I don't think we're going to see them pull off this miracle run like they did in the World Cup. Moving on over to E, we have Spain in first. Like Sam said, definitely the old guard is basically all gone, but we saw before the World Cup when Lopetegui kind of brought in this new age, these new players, and a lot of them are still around. Now, granted, Luis Enrique is now coach, but he's done a pretty good job. What we've seen from them so far has been pretty good. So yeah, I think Spain is going to win the group. Poland is going to finish second solely because of Robert Lewandowski. Just absolutely incredible. Can beat basically anyone. One moment, no goals. The next, he has two. And then Sweden finishing in third. And then Group F, the group of death. Absolutely crazy. I don't really like how this draw went. I think it's kind of stupid to have three of the six best teams in the world all in the same group. But I have France winning simply because they're the best team in the world. They have the best players, and yeah, it's that simple. Second is really a toss-up between Portugal and Germany. I think Portugal are going to edge it. I think Germany have some questions at the back. I don't think Jogi Löw is really a good coach anymore. Jogi Löw is kind of the Jose Mourinho for the international level for me. Used to be really good, highly acclaimed, has won tons of trophies. But yeah, I just don't think he really knows how to get across his message to this new style of player that Germany has, these new younger up-and-coming players. So yeah, Germany and Portugal could definitely be a toss-up. Germany could be really good. They could be really bad like we saw in the World Cup. We really don't know. Only time will tell. Portugal obviously has all the experience in the world. They have that one guy that's pretty good at soccer, Cristiano Ronaldo. So yeah, it could be his last tournament, or big tournament, I guess we could say. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Portugal in second and place Germany in third. But honestly, as a supporter of Portugal when I'm not pulling for the United States, I kind of hope Portugal finish third. It looks like they will probably have an easier draw if they were to finish third, as opposed to if they finish second, one of those weird scenarios that kind of happens every once in a while. So yeah, that's sort of how Sam and I see the group stages. I think we touched on most things. I guess I'm going to run through a couple other things. So I'm going to kind of touch on sort of the best teams in the tournament, and just Sam can add on to anything he wants to chip in. So first up, France. As long as they're healthy, Griezmann, Pogba, Kanté, Varane will all be in their primes. We look at the teams that excel the most, and that is those teams with really strong spines. And all the players I just mentioned, that is the spine of their team, and that is absolutely ridiculous. And then you add Kylian Mbappe dashing in from the wings with his lightning pace. They are just extremely good. Olivier Giroud will probably be out of the team by then. They'll be able to bring in some other striker options that have kind of been put on the back burner because Giroud's been surprisingly good. But yeah, overall France, best team in the tournament. Don't be surprised if they win it. Next up is England, like I touched on earlier, just tons and tons of attacking options. They have tons of depth. Their midfield is a little questionable. Like Sam said, we don't really know who's going to be partnering Jordan Henderson. It could be Declan Rice or one of those sort of number 8, number 10 players that I touched on earlier. So we'll have to wait and see there. It could also be Oxlade-Chamberlain, but England's just a really good team. At the back, we'll have to wait and see. We touched on this in a previous episode, but we don't really know who could partner Harry Maguire. John Stones just really isn't that good. So, yeah, if they can sort out their center back pairing, England could be a scary good team.
I think we have to, over the next kind of 12 months, we have to watch the goalkeeper situation with England as well. Ryan and I talk about this actually quite a bit, and United fans will know this as well. Dean Henderson is up and coming, and he's, in my opinion, he's already there. He's already good enough to kind of take that England starting job. And what we've seen with Jordan Pickford recently is we've seen kind of a mistake-prone goalkeeper that can let his emotions get the best of him sometimes. And I think that, he's obviously a great team player, Jordan Pickford, but I think it'd be super interesting to watch whether Southgate wants to lead towards a new goalkeeper or if he's going to stick around with what kind of worked at the World Cup. We'll have to wait and see.
Next up, I have Belgium. I really said all that needs to be said about them. Really good goalie, Eden Hazard, Lukaku, De Bruyne, one of the best attacking trios in the world. You can't overlook them. Their aging defense is starting to become an issue, like I said, and they might not have the greatest depth off the bench. And these are all the usual tokens that we can use to describe or characterize Belgium. But yeah, they seem to get it done, and they're going to be a really good team. Next up, Portugal. This could very well be Cristiano's last big tourney, and if any of us know Cristiano, we know that he is going to want to make it a show. He wants it to be sort of just that notion that he can put the team on his back, carry them to the next level, and finally, Portugal are absolutely loaded. Bernardo Silva, João Felix, Bruno Fernandes, Ruben Neves. They have Ricardo Pereira and Rafael Guerreiro at wingbacks, two wingbacks that have had a phenomenal season at their respective clubs. They could be a really, really good dynamic attacking force, super creative. And in the past, we've kind of seen them play the very park the bus, very simple style, win games 1-0. But I think they could continue to use that style that has won them games, but it just so happens that they've got better players in attack. That formula could lead to a really impressive display at the Euros.
Yeah, Portugal, what kind of worries me at the back, though, and that's, Rui Patricio, I guess, would be their starting goalkeeper, if I'm not wrong. Of course, they have Ruben Dias as well. But I think all of that going forward and putting all of those players you mentioned in the team at the same time, which is a natural you want to try and do, that's going to leave them susceptible at the back. Now, obviously, like you said, Cristiano is just going to do whatever he can to win this tournament, to do whatever he can to be the man at this tournament. But I think Portugal have to be careful in that regard. I think they're still, I agree with you, a top 5 team in this tournament without a doubt. But I think they do need to be questioned there.
Sam raises a good point. I think we should definitely look at who's going to be Ruben Dias's partner. It seems that Pepe is going to more than likely be retired by then. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for who's going to be Portugal's center back. But if they can find an up-and-coming player or just a veteran player that can hold his own, whoever, Portugal could be a really scary team next summer at the Euros. Next up, we have Netherlands. Sam loves them. I think they're good, but not great. But what makes them stand out so much is their center back trio at the back, and that is Virgil van Dijk, Stefan de Vrij, and De Ligt. Just a fantastic center back pairing, tough to beat. They've got a decent midfield, Wijnaldum, Frankie de Jong. Not amazing. They're not going to be able to outplay those really elite midfields like France, but still a solid midfield. My question is up top, specifically the striker position. Daniel Malin is an up-and-coming player to keep an eye on. Really good striker for PSV these past 1 to 2 years, but they don't have the strikers they used to have. We used to see Klaas-Jan Huntelaar, Robin van Persie leading the line, and now they don't really have those sort of players. They've got some decent wingers, Bergwijn, Memphis Depay. So yeah, keep an eye out for Netherlands. They could be really, really good, or just decent but not great. And then last up, I think Italy is going to be a really good team at the Euros. Mancini, the past 2 years, has been able to turn this team around. He's brought in this new wave of up-and-coming talent. Sandro Tonali, who's the player from Roma? They're attacking. Zanolio. Zanolio is Zanolio is going to be healthy by then. He's going to be really good. I'm sure Immobile will still be firing on all cylinders. That man just so many goals out of nowhere these past couple of years. Really a late bloomer. So Federico Chiesa is another one. So they've got a lot of talent. They're still going to have Bonucci and Romanogli at the back. So a good defensive pairing, Donnarumma net. So keep an eye out for Italy. they very well could be back to their best under Mancini at the Euros next summer.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with the kind of the young guard of the Italians coming through, but what we see with them is maybe being kind of a couple of years away of being that strong force again. I agree with you. They could be good at this tournament. I think if the draw favors them, we could see them reach the quarterfinals or maybe even the semifinals to be really stretched. But they may be one or two kind of major tournaments away from really competing.
Yeah, I don't think they'll have a shot at winning the tournament, but they could very well sneak into the semifinals out of nowhere, depending on how the draw goes. More realistically, maybe the quarterfinals is a good goal, but yeah, keep an eye out for Italy. They're a lot better than what people think. People kind of forgot about them after they missed the World Cup, and I think they'll be back to a fairly decent team come summer 2021. So those are my top 6 teams for the tournament. A lot of people are going to be wondering, well, where is Spain and Germany? So I'm going to touch on them. So first up, Germany. I spoke about it earlier. I just don't like Jogi Löw as a coach. He had his time. It came. He succeeded, but now it is gone. He can't get his message across. He's that old school style coach, similar to how Mourinho, we all know it's not going to end up well at Tottenham. There's plenty of other clubs where it just hasn't ended up well. And yeah, I just think Jogi Löw doesn't have much of a future at Germany. I think Germany are actually going to fire him after this tournament when they could potentially get third in the group stages, maybe get knocked out in the quarterfinals. So yeah, we'll have to see. They obviously have tons of talent, tons of depth, just like all Germany teams, but will Jogi Löw be able to translate that into good performances on the field? We don't really know. Also looking at the center back pairing, there's just not a good player to go beside Niklas Süle. Jogi Löw's been pretty upfront about no longer playing Mats Hummels and Jerome Boateng, so those two are off the table. And yeah, there's just no defender that can really partner Niklas Süle.
Yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from when you talk about Germany and where they struggle. But I think, I have more optimism with Jogi Löw than you do. I think we've seen him do really well at major tournaments in the past by just being a great man manager. Now, I think that's really underrated in the game these days, as we see a lot of these coaches get lost in tactics and kind of lose the personality of the team. And I think as long as Jogi Löw is the coach there, I think that we'll see him deploy this team that has fight and has grit. And I think, we've seen him kind of lean towards these young players before, and it's gone well. And so maybe not the World Cup, but I think, yeah, there's definitely a great chance that they could do well. But I agree with you. I think that they do have problems that they need to sort out first.
So moving on to Spain, just this weird in-between of aging players and young up-and-coming players. Luis Enrique is a pretty good coach. I think he'll do a pretty good job with them, but don't expect them to be lifting a trophy like we saw in the mid-2000s or late 2010s, I guess I should say, when they were just dominant. PK is now retired, and they definitely could use a partner for him. So I also think they're missing a striker. Alvaro Morata and Iago Aspas are not the answer, neither is Paco Alcacer. So they definitely need a number 9 that can bang in the goals. So yeah, I'm just not too high on Spain or Germany, but I'm going to touch on the results now, what Sam and I think are going to be the final results of the tournament. First up, we have the winner of the tournament, and that is France. Sam and I both agree France is the best team in the world, and they're going to win this tournament. They've got the best players, not the best coach, but we've seen time and time again the French players have been able to overcome the coaching, and yeah, at the end of the day, quality wins tournaments, and France have the best quality.
I think we're going to see France be the favorites to win every tournament for the next probably 10, 15 years. They have the perfect mix of veteran players. They have the perfect mix of players in their prime and young players as well, who we're going to see take the place of those aging players. And they just have their system right now is just so good. And as long as Kylian Mbappe is firing, as long as Paul Pogba is still around and still is anywhere near where he's at now, Antoine Griezmann still has some years left as well. These massive players that they have, as long as they keep that together, and as long as nothing goes drastically wrong, I think France will be the favorites for the next 2 World Cups, for the next 2 European Championships at least. And so I just don't think there's a team at this tournament that can match up with them, and I can't see them losing a single game at this tournament.
For runners-up, I have England. I think they're going to sneak into the final. Their attacking options are just really good, and I think if Gareth Southgate can figure out a few small things as far as who's going to partner Jordan Henderson, who's going to partner Harry Maguire, if he gets those two things right, England are just going to be extremely good. Sam has the Netherlands finishing second, and I'm going to let him briefly touch on just second place and why he thinks it's going to be Holland.
Yeah, so just jumping right out there, I don't necessarily think that the Netherlands are the second best team at this World Cup, or at the European Championships, excuse me. But I think that the draw that I have them playing out, I think we could definitely see them kind of sneak into the finals. I see, them playing against Germany and beating Germany. I see them playing against even Portugal. I think that we could see them kind of upset Portugal in a fantastic, potential even round of 16 game. We could see, that's the fun of this. We don't know who's going to play in the knockout stages, but some of the matchups we have there could be incredible. But I think that the Netherlands, with that back three and their ability at set pieces, I think has to be looked at as well. I think if we look at England from the World Cup a couple of years ago, set pieces are what took them to the semifinals of the World Cup. It took them so far. They could lob a ball into Harry Kane, Harry Maguire, tons of options for them in the box. And I think with that back three that the Netherlands have, they're going to score a lot of set pieces, and they're going to be very hard to score against. They're going to play a counter-attacking system. They're going to let teams come at them, and they're going to push right back at them, and it's going to be great to watch. I think that the Netherlands, I think they're being slept on a little bit by everyone, including you, Ryan. I think you're sleeping on them a little bit. If they could sort out their goalkeeper position, which I think is their weakest position right now, I think that they could be a serious threat to win this tournament.
Next up, we have the individual awards. We're going to quickly go through these. Golden Boot, Sam has Kylian Mbappe. I have Romelu Lukaku. Both of these are very realistic options. I think I'm going to give the edge to Lukaku just because Belgium have the easier group, and I think a majority of the goals that end up winning a player the Golden Boot come from the group stage, and Belgium has a lot easier group than France does. So I think Lukaku definitely has a shout for Golden Boot. Next up is Golden Ball. I was kind of surprised to see Sam see as Paul Pogba. Sam, no matter what United fans have to say about Paul Pogba, Sam has always been one of those guys that has backed Paul Pogba. He knows the talent Paul Pogba has. I've always thought Paul Pogba is a world beater. He's a really good player. I've kind of followed Zidane's interest in him. But yeah, Sam has Paul Pogba, and I have Kylian Mbappe. Both France players. That's not a surprise because France is the best team in the tournament, and they've got the best players.
I think what we saw from Paul Pogba at the World Cup, I think, regardless of his club form over the last, 2 or 3 years, when we see Paul Pogba put on the French shirt, his game just rises to another level. And I think with France playing so well, and I think they'll score so many goals in this tournament, I think a lot of that will come through the middle and Paul Pogba as well.
And then last up, we have Golden Glove. I'm going to give it to our Golden Glove winner of the World Cup, and that is Thibaut Courtois. Like I said, Belgium have one of the easiest groups. They're by far the best team in their group, and they could get a fairly easy draw if they win the group, which we're assuming they will. Courtois will probably have a lot of clean sheets, and Belgium can also make a deep run in the tournament, which is another thing that's usually required for a player to win Golden Glove.
Yeah, and I gave mine to Hugo Lloris, and there's a theme, of course, of my picks here, and that's all French. I think France will concede very little goals in this tournament, and I think that they'll score a lot. For the Golden Glove, I juggled a lot. I juggled between Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. I juggled between Lloris and Courtois as well. But I think, in my opinion, Hugo Lloris isn't the best goalie in the world, but I think he's good enough to do it, and I think just France in general will keep a lot of clean sheets, and I think that'll lead to Hugo winning the Golden Glove. So after we've talked about the individual awards here, I think that's going to wrap it up for our show. I think I just wanted to point everyone's attention to the fixtures midweek here. I think we see the Del Clasicer this week between Dortmund and Bayern, so definitely tune into that and kind of tweet us if there's anything interesting that you heard in this podcast or in those games as well. Tune in next week. I'll be covering all the football drama between now and then. We might see additional news about the Premier League coming back as well as La Liga. If any updates are happening there, we'll let you guys know for sure. And come back for our special topic next week as well. If you've liked what you heard today on the podcast, we'd love you to subscribe to the pod on Podbean, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Rate us on those platforms and share us with your football friends. Give us a subscribe and like as well. So thank you guys so much for the support, and we will talk to you next week.